L&D teams want training to have an impact, but how and when you measure ROI can be challenging without a plan.
How do you increase the chances of getting a positive ROI? Well, it's all in how you design it. It's beginning with ROI in mind up front. Too much of the time we roll out a program and then someone says, hey, show me the ROI. And now you're having to figure out what the measures are. But if we begin with that business impact and that ROI in mind up front, develop those objectives, not just the learning objectives, but the application objectives, the impact objectives, and the ROI objectives, and then use the objectives as the architectural blueprint and build evaluation into the program, you get better results and you make the evaluation much easier.
That's Patti Phillips, CEO of ROI Institute. Patti will share how their ROI methodology helps organizations ensure training investments drive measurable results. Next on Powered by Learning.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. DaVinci's approach to learning is grounded in 30 years of innovation and expertise. We use proven strategies and leading technology to develop solutions that empower learners to improve quality and boost performance. Learn more at davinci.com.
I'm joined today by DaVinci Senior Instructional Designer Project Manager Beth Buchanan and our guest Patti Phillips, CEO of ROI Institute. For more than 30 years, ROI Institute has helped organizations evaluate the success of projects and programs, including measuring the financial return on investment by implementing their ROI methodology into organizations. Welcome, Patti.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great to talk with you, Patti.
Thank you, Beth.
Patti, let's start out by sharing a little bit about you and ROI Institute and how you help organizations measure learning.
Yes, thank you so much. So ROI Institute is founded by myself and my husband, Jack Phillips, who developed the methodology around which we have built our business. He developed the ROI methodology back in the 1970s when he was a young engineer at Lockheed, and he was asked to show the ROI on a cooperative education program. He began with a framework and bringing in cost-benefit analysis and then operationalized it, putting in place the process and standards. And over the years, through research and vetting through academics and chief financial officers and executives, we've developed the process that has now become pretty much the gold standard process to demonstrating impact and ROI. So we built the business about 30 years ago. We each have corporate executive history. So we've been in corporate, built the business, and we work with organizations worldwide. So for-profit, not-for-profit, non-governmental organizations, and we work in a variety of fields. Training and development, the human resources space is our primary. That's where we built the business. But we also have expanded the methodology to cut across the enterprise, which makes it a really robust process. And we work with organizations multiple ways. One is, we'll do the work for them. So we have a consulting team that goes in and conducts studies. So we conduct impact studies, ROI studies on major projects for clients. We have the consulting arm, but we also have the coaching and the other support. And another piece of the business, and a real big piece of the business, is we like to teach people how to do it. We know that through learning and development education, that's where sustainability comes in. So we have a certification process where if an individual or a company has a program that they want to evaluate and demonstrate the impact and ROI for it and build capability, our certification process is one way to do it very efficiently. Because when we look at the cost of bringing us in to do it versus the cost of them learning how to do it, and they still get the coaching and the support that comes with doing it, as well as the educational portion, is a real efficient way to get it done while building capability.
Sounds like you approach it from all angles. Everybody is involved from the top down, coaches, certifications, consulting. Can you just take a step back and tell us a little bit about the importance of ROI in training? What steps can you take to sort of improve your chances for a positive ROI?
So, it's important, one, to understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it that way. And that's where education comes in, regardless of whether it's ROI or anything, right? We need to understand what it's all about. And when it comes to ROI, there's a lot of misinformation and in some cases, disinformation around it. People are often afraid of it. They think we shouldn't be doing it. There's a lot of reasons that they have for some of the misinformation out there. So that, again, is where education comes in. Understanding what it is, why we use it, how we use it, the context in which we use ROI, and why it's important not to just focus on ROI. That's the ultimate measure, because that's the measure where we can compare benefits of our programs to the cost in one metric, but it is only one. And if you look at any annual report of any organization, they're working off multiple measures. Well, we do the same. So education clarifies the what, the how, and the why. It gives you methodology. It helps show you how you can use the existing processes that you have in place and how it all fits under the umbrella of the ROI methodology. And the other thing that it will do is help you see how you integrate assessment, measurement, and evaluation into the design of the solution. And that gets that second part of the question, Beth, is how do you increase the chances of getting a positive ROI? Well, it's all in how you design it. It's beginning with ROI in mind up front. Too much of the time we roll out a program and then someone says, hey, Beth, show me the ROI. And now you're having to figure out what the measures are. But if we begin with that business impact and that ROI in mind up front, develop those objectives, not just the learning objectives, but the application objectives, the impact objectives, and the ROI objectives, and then use the objectives as the architectural blueprint and build evaluation into the program, you get better results and you make the evaluation much easier.
How is that different than, evaluation in terms of kind of like a survey, or, a lot of people feel like they're evaluating with a survey or something like that at the end. How does this go a little bit deeper?
Well, it's methodology, it's process,
Okay.
right? I mean, you can collect data with a survey. And so we use surveys for sure. Surveys are useful tools, but it's all in what are the questions you're asking? How are you asking them? Why are you asking them? How are you going to use them? And what insights do the answers to those questions actually deliver? So it's not just send a survey, collect data, call it good evaluation. There's really a process to it. And as you know, I think it was W. Edwards Deming, father of total quality management, said if we can't explain what we do as a process, we don't know what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're giving process and then good research methodology. And so we have standards that support the process. We also comply with standards that are just fundamental to good program evaluation.
I learned that lesson with teaching, having to stand up and explain, I taught literature and, you can read the book, but teaching that to someone else is a little bit different. So I love what you said there about asking those right questions and sort of building it into the design process. You guys have tools for that, don't you? Can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned something in previous conversations called the ROI Estimator. What is that?
So the ROI Estimator is a tool we have on our website, and it's free for anyone to use, and happy to share with you guys the link if you want to push it out to your audience. We created the ROI Estimator in partnership with Warwick University many years ago, and we allowed them to use it for a few years before we opened it up to the entire community. And what the estimator is, it's not forecasting the ROI by any means. Okay. It is estimating the ROI based on the design of your programs and projects. We have hundreds and hundreds of studies, client studies, as well as the studies that we have published in the case studies, which are also client studies, but they've given us permission to share. We've taken all of these studies and we looked at the studies and said, what are the elements from a design standpoint that really differentiate those programs that are delivering really high ROIs from those who are not working at all? And so we took those design elements and we provided behind each design element a rating scale. And so you can go use the estimator to rate yourself along these design elements to just get an idea of what the potential ROI could be. Again, it's not a true forecast because it's not necessarily quantitative in nature. You're not really using business metrics and doing your analysis to do the forecast, but you are considering, given these design elements and the weighting behind the elements, here's the potential ROI we have if we can make it work, if we can build it so that it works. But that also includes, Beth, and this is something that a lot of people forget, it is about that transfer of learning. Because it's not just building a program and delivering the program. We have to look at who is supporting the application of the program. And that's a big part of design. Who needs to be involved? What do they need to know? What do they need to do with what they know to make this program work?
Yes. And there's a lot to unpack there. So I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about, I know this process, you have 12 steps, you have your 12-step process. Can you tell us a little bit about how that unfolds? What is that, kind of the shorthand?
Yeah, the shorthand, so it's 12 steps. Someone once told us 12 steps is too many. It's like, okay, call it 4 phases.
Okay.
So you can go with 12 step, 4 phases. So we break it down into the 4 phases, and it begins with planning that evaluation up front. So the very first 3 steps is all about the alignment. So starting with why. What are the business measures you're trying to improve, and what's the value of improving them? And is this problem or opportunity worth pursuing? And then doing the work to ensure you have the right solution in place and developing those objectives. So the first 3 steps are all about alignment, aligning those programs to the needs of the organizations, and then setting them up through those objectives so that when you build it and roll it out, you're doing so with the objectives and the end game in mind. And then there's data collection. So we collect data throughout the process. So we're going to collect those data during the program. We collect the data after the program. Of course, you have your pre-program data that you collect. And we use a lot of different techniques depending on context. You mentioned surveys. Surveys, number one, most frequently used data collection method. And many people say they do it because it's easy. Surveys and questionnaires are easy to administer. But if you want good data, they are hard to design. Because we've got to make sure we're asking the right questions the right way to the right people in such a way they will provide the most objective data possible given the nature of the data collection.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time on survey design. We actually wrote a book, Survey Basics, with ATD a few years ago. I taught survey design in a doctoral program. And so for about 10 years. And so all of that we combined in the very brief book on survey design because we use them so frequently. But we use other techniques too, action planning, focus groups, interviews. So a lot of different ways we collect data. That phase can be the most expensive part of our process if we're not careful. It should not be. But we will often see people use a survey, use interviews, use focus groups. And there's something to be said for triangulation, but there's also something to be said for the benefits and cost of the data collection. So we always have to go back to what is it we're trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? And then there's the analysis piece, which is the most fun part because that's where results come from. The first step in our analysis process is that step to isolate the effects of the program. And that is one of the areas it's been debated for centuries. Should you isolate the impact of training? A lot of times that debate occurs because there's a lack of understanding what we're trying to do. When you go into a problem to solve a problem with any kind of intervention, the question is how much of the problem is solved as a result of that intervention? And if you want any credibility in making that claim, you need a technique to help you get there. And that's what we're doing with isolating the effects of the program. So we'll use control groups sometimes, trendline analysis, mathematical modeling. Sometimes we'll use estimates because sometimes you just go ask if you can't use the other techniques. That gives us credibility and that gives us good impact story. And then to get to ROI, we convert measures to money, bring in the cost, calculate the ROI, and we always report the intangibles. And then the last phase is this data optimization, and that's your storytelling and then using the data to improve the process.
One thing that I was struck with through all of that was this idea of, can you isolate impact or not? I've heard that discussion before, and one person said, it's really you're a contributor to impact, right? You're part of the story because when you work with, there's so many facets to it. What do you say to that? Point of view? Well,
this is an age-old debate. It's been done for decades, right? It's nothing new. And it's one of those issues that comes around and it goes away and it comes back around. And that's where it gets to not really understand what we're doing. We all contribute. The question is, how much of the improvement in a measure is due to a specific investment? So if you're of the mentality that training or learning and development are activities, if that's your mentality is an activity, then we're going to do our activity, do a descriptive analysis and say somewhere along the way we may have contributed. When you look at yourself or your programs as a real investment, an intervention for change, and change occurs, we need a way to make the claim we need a way to give us some credibility in our claim that this is how much our program contributed. So it's really about what are you doing? I hear these things and people say, we don't need to waste the resources on isolating the effects of the program. It's not resource intensive.
Yeah.
So that debate, don't even understand it because it's not resource intensive. I look at the issue around, we shouldn't use control groups. Well, you know what? If you're piloting a solution to see if it works, you've kind of done that anyway, right? And we're not experimenting on people. We're experimenting to see, does this innovative solution deliver the value we need it to so we can justify spending the money on it?
Yeah.
So again, what are you really trying to do here? The other thing is, when you're in the C-suite, and we've sat in it, we've been there, done that on both sides as consultants and being participants at that table, asking the question, how do you know? How do you know your program contributed? And what is the basis for the claim you're making that sales went up or productivity went up as a result of the program? So it is an age-old debate. Again, a lot of times it's debated because people don't understand exactly what we're doing with it. It's not necessarily taking anything away from the fact that training is part of everything, because surely it is. And surely we need to develop our people. But on these big investments that we're making, are those investments delivering the impact that they need to justify the use of those resources for that investment? That's where we're going for. It's not something you want to do for everything, but we're just really looking at those big investments. Are they delivering the impact?
Yeah. And that's sort of like having, you had mentioned before, having a problem worth solving, right? For these types of things. Is that what you mean there? Is this type of thing, the big impact?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the problem worth solving, and then looking for the solution or combination of solutions to solve the problem, and then being able to say, as a result of this investment, here's how much impact, here's how much improvement we've seen in these measures. And then given the value of that improvement compared to the cost, we actually used our resources efficiently. Because a lot of people will say, ROI, training's not about ROI. Well, certainly it is, right? Training's not about making money. Well, yeah, it kind of is. I mean, how do you tell the sales people going through training it's not about making money? But it's not necessarily about sales. It could be about more efficiency. It could be about reducing errors, which is costly. It could be about reducing turnover, which is really costly. So when we invest in our people, we are helping the organization make money in some respects, some cases, save money, avoid cost, and do greater good while making money, saving money, and avoiding cost.
Yeah, I like what you said there. It made me think, of just the idea of value, right? I mean, we think of training as solving a job problem, but we also have to tie it to increasing value or finding where value is being lost, right? Where's the waste that we can, save on, or, so making that leap. And that's your bridge to your business solution or your business goals, right? Is going from what does the job need to how do we bring value to the organization?
That's right. And we bring value to the organization by bringing value to our people. And that's where the other measures come in, right? Are they building capability that they are using on the job and that they can use in future jobs? That's value to our people. And are we, is the system supporting our people as they use these skills that we say are so important to them? That is value to our people. But by bringing value to our people and helping them develop their capability, you're bringing value to the organization. And we all know, we've all been around, right? If organizations don't do well, they cannot do good by their people.
Yeah.
And that's just fundamental economics. So you're bringing value, we call it a value chain or a chain of impact, but there's value throughout the implementation of a program. But it begins with getting clear on why we're implementing the program in the first place, and ensuring that the people involved are bought into whatever that program or process is, because now you're increasing the chances they'll actually use it.
Yeah.
So, Patti, when you think about maybe some of the barriers for organizations implementing or looking into the ROI of their training, what are they and how do you dispel those so that more people embrace the whole concept of looking for the ROI?
Yeah, and I love it. So a lot of the barriers are perceived more than real. People will say it's too expensive. Well, I mean, not necessarily. We make it expensive because we wait until it's all over to do it. And now you're having to bring the consultant group in here and pay, $40,000, $50,000 to do a study, whatever it is. So we make it a little bit expensive because we don't plan for it. We make it a little bit difficult because we don't plan for it. We make it harder on ourselves, harder on our participants. So we hear cost, difficulty. It takes too much time. Not if you build it in. The heavy lift should be on the front end, the planning part. And then, of course, the design of the solution is usually the investment, the big investment. Evaluation to do an ROI study, one study, should cost you no more than 5 to 10% of your program cost. If you set it up right, that's what you'll see. It doesn't cost that much. So we cause ourselves pain, time, expense. A big one that we hear, and this may be number one, is because no one's asking. So we often wait. We see people wait until they ask. And that by the time they're asking for it, they've made a decision about that program. So rather than wait until you're asked, go ahead and start building it in. And maybe, some people in your audience, maybe they're brand new to evaluation, or maybe they're just getting good at level 2 and they want to move the needle up to that follow-up at application and behavior change. Do it. You don't have to jump right into it. But if we wait, we have to remember they probably are asking for good reason. And that reason is they're looking very closely at whatever that program is. And when we wait, sometimes that bridge just breaks out from under us. And that's when we panic and we cost money. So,
yeah, I would think if leadership is asking you at the tail end, what's the ROI? They're asking because they're questioning more than seeing the ROI that you've been planning for at the beginning of the project.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Yeah, they're not asking, they're questioning, right? And a lot of times the question's rhetorical, right? Because they've already worked it out. So
what would you say to, you just mentioned people who may be a little bit new to this or who have fallen victim to that, getting to the end of a learning solution or a program and going, oh, wait a minute, I forgot about the whole evaluation piece. And how would you say one could take baby steps in kind of building the muscle memory to work this into their design, work it into the beginning, be cognizant of this from the start?
Yeah, start asking questions up front. Don't worry about the evaluation right now. Let's work up front and say, okay, let's get clear on why we're doing this. And there's different ways you can approach it, right? The ideal way is there's a problem or opportunity we need to take advantage of. So we look at the business measures, we partner with our clients and talk to them, say, what's your problem? Well, too much time in meetings. Okay, let's investigate. Why is there too much time in meetings? And look at the solutions and then think through what do people need to know to change what they're doing to reduce that time and how can we roll it out so they buy into it, so they learn what they need to know to do what we want them to do to reduce time in meetings and get value from there. So that's ideal. But something simple that people who are just getting started can do. That is, look at that program that you're working with and ask, okay, what exactly are they going to learn? What exactly do they need to know? And then if they learn it and they know it, what exactly are they going to do with it? How are they going to use it? What behaviors are going to change? How exactly is this going to work? And if all of that takes place, what's the consequence of it? If they do exactly what we want them to do, the way we want them to do it, what's the consequence? How's it going to impact output, quality, cost, time, customer satisfaction, job satisfaction, work habits, and innovation? How's it going to impact those measures? And how much might those measures improve as a result of this? And then if they improve, what's the value? How much money is that going to help us save? Just thinking through that logic, that is a very easy thing to do. And it gets them in the mindset of critically thinking through what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it that way. We have a tool, and if you guys want to share it with them, happy to do it. It's really simple. We call it the alignment conversation. It's one of probably the favorite tools that we offer through the certification process, but it demonstrates that logic because it's what we do up front that leads to what we get in the end. So if they'll just start doing that and then look at a real easy thing they can do is take a look at those end of course program evaluations they're running, look at the questions. Are they meaningful questions? Are they giving you any real insight around what people might do or should do when they go back to the job?
Well, that's great advice. I love that of just taking the time in the beginning and kind of walking through that framework of just asking those questions because we so often jump to solutioning, right? We jump to the Band-Aid and think we have the answer, but we haven't stopped to question and critically think. Like just that framework that you offered, I think is great. Before we go, I did want to still talk a little bit about implementation. Implementation is a hot topic in L&D, and why is that so important? You're someone who talks and lives ROI. Why is implementation it's such a big deal?
Well, I mean, there's two paths, right? There's implementation of the measurement strategy, implementation of the program, and implementation of the program has to occur if you want to get to impact and ROI. So let's look at implementation of the program. You can run a program, people can learn, but to get to impact and ROI, they have to do it. Right. And that's where that implementation and application of knowledge and skills comes in, because if they don't do it, you're not going to get impact in ROI. It is mathematically impossible because they have to apply it. And so we look at learning, for the long haul, right? Holly Burkett, I'll give Holly a shout out. She has done a lot of research around program implementation, measurement implementation, and what it takes to ensure that processes are sustained within the organization. A big part of learning and development, the programming, and I mentioned earlier, is really focusing on that transfer of learning.
Yeah.
And Mary Broad did some early research years ago on transfer of learning and put it on the map. But if you look at her work and that of many others, there are 3 roles in the organization that have the most influence on the implementation of a program or process. And there's 3 time frames in which each of these roles can take action to do it. The number one influence on successful sustainability and implementation is the manager of that learner. And a lot of times we don't set the manager up for success. We may do pre-work for the participants. We may give them the objectives. We may have them help us identify the impact measures, but a lot of times we just forego the conversation with the manager of the learner. And if we don't set that manager up in the beginning to help the learner be successful with the use of the knowledge, skills, information, and insights they're gaining, then we are hurting ourselves in terms of that implementation, because you can't get from here's what I know to here's the impact that this program has had without the implementation. And we've got to get that manager involved in that. So it is critical for people to use what they learn. Your folks, they're developing dashboards, right? Dashboards are a big thing. All right, we develop a dashboard. Well, if people aren't using the data from the dashboard, you're getting nothing for it. So stop doing it. The same with evaluation. If people aren't using the insights coming from your evaluations, then stop doing them. And that's even with your level 1. If you've got a bunch of level 1 questions you're asking, nobody's paying attention to them, then stop.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that, right? So implementation is key throughout. People have to use what they've learned. We've heard that old adage, knowledge is power. Knowledge is only powerful if you put it to use. And so whether it's the learning program, whether it's engaging the manager, what they need to know, or whether it's the evaluation, if we're not leveraging the insights we're gaining from these investments, then we can't get to impact and ROI.
Patti, such great information that you're sharing, and I know you're inspiring our listeners to take further action. You mentioned some of the resources that you have. Just kind of give an overview of what people will find when they come to your website.
Yes, we have a lot of resources. We've been doing this for many, many years, and so we've just got tons of resources. One is the ROI estimator that we talked about earlier. love for people to try that. It's wide open on the website. We've got boot camps. We have a portal of free tools that include case studies and job aids and worksheets. And then we also have the Center for Talent Measurement and Reporting, if anyone is interested in that. That includes a library of metrics that Dave Vance and the team at CTR, Center for Talent Reporting, created a few years ago. We purchased the assets. We are happy to give your audience access to that too. And I'm happy to provide all that information to you so you can share with the audience.
And that just scratches the surface of the resources that you have to offer. There are many books and many things that people can engage with and ongoing content. So we want to thank you, Patti, for taking the time to talk with us today and our Powered by Learning listeners.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Patti.
Beth, Patti had some great points about the importance of ROI in training, including that you should think about ROI before you design your course.
Yeah, exactly. One of my biggest takeaways here from this podcast was that ROI doesn't have to be costly or complicated as long as you build it into that planning phase. If you think about it from the beginning, it makes me think of our learning strategy work that we do all the time for clients, where we're developing objectives and aligning with business needs so we address real problems and find real opportunities.
Absolutely. Great reminders for our listeners. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Susan.
And thanks to our guest, Patti Phillips of ROI Institute. If you have an idea for a topic or guest, please reach out to us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com. And don't forget that you can subscribe to Powered by Learning wherever you listen to your podcasts.